All right, good evening. Today we're learning Maseches Zevachim. We're going to finish up Mem Aleph. We're on Mem Aleph on the base. Yeah, you seem to be good at that tonight. So let's just see how tonight goes. I'm just kidding. I'm not coming back tomorrow night. I'm out of here. I'm out of here. Yeah, so today we're going to go up to the Mishnah on the bottom of Mem Beis and Mid Beis. So we're exactly one block behind by the end of the day. And Mir Hashem, by the end of the week, we'll get there. We're very close. Okay, we're almost halfway down on Mem Aleph and Mid Beis. Easier sugya than last night, which would be every sugya in Shas. In fact, I don't think it's much competition. So let's go. Our Mishnah at the beginning of this parak, in fact, our Mishnah at the end of our Mishnah on Daf Lamed Vav Amid Beis, it taught us this line at the two dots. Lefichach im nasan kulan kitiknon, that if you did everything right, so then you're good to go. But lifnai v'lifnim, not lifnai v'lifnim, but lifnim, bifnim, if you're in the heichal and you skip anything, everything's ma'akev there. You can't skip anything. That's a one major chakira between chutz and pnim. That outside by the large mizbeach, we have b'diavad and lechatchila. Inside, we don't really have that. You have to do the whole avoda. We're going to discuss this at length today. Okay, Tanan Hasa, we have a Mishnah in Maseches Menachos. Pigel bekomet velo belevona. Let's say that the Kohen was mefagel. He had a machshava of chutz while he did the kmitza, the grabbing of the flour, but velo belevona. But he didn't have this kavana with the frankincense, or belevona. He had the kavana with the levona velo bekomet. Reb Meir Omer pigul v'chayav and alav kares. Even though you only did halfsies, even though you only did part, I ein mefagil b'chatzi matir. We're going to discuss today what his shita is, and we're going to primarily be seeing through the lens of Reish Lakish as to how to even understand Rameir. How could you be chayiv pigul if you only did half of the avoda the wrong way? The chachamim omrim, which we would have much more anticipated, ein bo kares ad shiafagil b'chol hamatir. So on its face, it seems like there is this machlokes of whether or not we hold of mefagel b'chatzi matir or ein mefagel b'chatzi matir. Comes along Reish Lakish with a huge chiddush. He says no. Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish lo tema taima de Reb Meir de kasav mefagel b'chatzi matir. The reason why Rav Meir says that you're chayav kares when you only had kavana by the kmitza, but you didn't have machshavas pigul by the levona, don't say it's because he holds that you're mefagel b'chatzi matir. Elahacha b'mayaskinon. What must be the case? Kigon shenasan es hakometz b'machshava v'halevona b'shtika. When he did the kmitza, he did it with machshavas pigul. When he did the levona, it was b'shtika. So is that chatzi matir? Says the Gemara, no. Look what's going on. Kasavar, what does he hold? Kola ose al das rishonehu ose. The second step, which he did b'shtika, is just an extension of the first step, which he did b'machshavas pigul. So it's not that he holds that you can be mefagel b'chatzi matir. Maybe he holds that you need to be mefagel b'chatzi, that you need to be that there's no pigul b'chatzi matir, but he's redefining what it means to have a machshava. He's saying your machshava that you started with by the kmitza extends to what you did with the levona b'shtika. So again, Reb Meir holds, and Reish Lakish is translating, that if you do the kmitza b'machshavas pigul and the levona b'shtika, the whole thing is viewed as one little tied up bow. You're chayav kares. It's big chiddush because you're taking shtika, making it pigul, and saying you're chayav kares. So that means the machlokas between Reb Meir and the Chachamim is not about being mefagel b'chatzi matir. This is going to be a big discussion. Reish Lakish's shita is not so simple. Says the Gemara Mimai. Where did Reish Lakish get this shita from? So the Gemara says from our Mishnah on Lamed Vav Amid Beis. Midikatani, what did our Mishnah say? Lefichach, that when you're inside the mizbeach, when you're inside the heichal, you're by the mizbeach hazav. Im nasan kulan kitiknan. If you did most of it the right way, ve'achas shelo kitikna, pasal ve'ein bo kares. If you do most of it the right way and a little bit of it the wrong way, meaning the beginning you don't have machshavas pigul and you do, so there we say pasal ve'ein bo kares. Look at this diuk because it's the lumdus of Reish Lakish and Rav Meir. Check this out. 2/3 of the way down. Ha'achas shelo kitikna. But if you started out with shelo kitikna, you started out with a machshavas pigul, and then v'chulan kitikna, and all the rest was done properly, pigul. So Got to be super clear here. Rav Meir holds, Reish Lakish within Rav Meir holds, that if your first machshava on the first step of your avoda was a machshavas pigul, and any of your subsequent steps were b'shtika, you're chayv pigul. We view them as, if it was flipped, that the beginning was perfect, shtika, or perfect, right? And only later was pigul, zero, non-starter. Pasal ve'ein bo kares. So that's what he holds. Reish Lakish is saying that Rav Meir holds of this principle. When are you going to be mifagil? When are you going to be chayiv kares? When you only have kavanah for part? That's when it's the first part, which is machshavas pigul, and the second part is bishtika. That's his formula. It's not because of mefaglin b'chatzi matir. It's because he holds that when you have machshavas pigul followed by shtika, the shtika is just an extension of the machshavas pigul. It's all tied up in one bow. That is his shita, and he learned it from our Mishnah. So the Gemara says, money. Who could the author of our Mishnah be? There's no way that in our case that we would ever have a scenario, even in Rav Meir's pristine case, machshavas pigul on the kmitza and shtika on the lavona. What would the chachamim say? Ein mefaglin b'chatzi matir. They don't have this weird thing of kol osel das rishon hu osel like Rav Meir does, like Reish Lakish wants to say within Rav Meir. So it can't be that it's talking about the Rabbanon. Ella Rav Meir has to be that we're talking about Rav Meir. So our Mishnah is a raya for Rav Meir that we're not talking about mefaglin b'chatzi matir. Rather, we're talking about that if your first maisa was a machshavas pigul and your second was a shtika, we view that all as one, and therefore you're chayiv kares. The time of the Reb Meir mishum de befaglin b'chatzi matir hu, and this is Reish Lakish's real depth of his proof, and if you want to say perhaps that Reb Meir was talking about befaglin b'chatzi matir, then afilu ketikutani nami, then our Mishnah should have been chayiv kares. Why? Because if you look back on the bottom of Lamed Vav Amud Beis, it said that if you did the beginning, this is the end of the Mishnah on the very bottom of Lamed Vav Amud Beis, Lefichach nasan kulan ketikna ve'achas shelo ketikna. You did most of it the right way and some of it the wrong way. Psula ve'ein bo kares. And it seems, this is a bit of a tough view, but that he would have said that should have been. Sorry, that's correct. If it was just a question of mefaglin, v'itaima, where am I? Lost my spot here. V'itaima d'Rameir mishum mefaglin b'chatzi matir. Had it been that there was pigul with a chatzi matir, then the order wouldn't matter. Because we wouldn't care what's first, your machshavas pigul or your shtika. Even in our Mishnah, we would have said that you would have been chai, but that's not what our Mishnah says. Ella lav, the Ella should be added there. Ella lav, it must be, says Reish Lakish, mishum de kasavar kol osel das rishona osel. That's shitas Rav Meir through the lens of Reish Lakish. That there's no Rav Meir doesn't hold mafaglin b'chatzi matir. He doesn't hold of that. If he did, our Mishnah would have been chayiv kares, and it wasn't. Rather, he holds kol osel das rishona hu osel, that as long as step one is machshavas pigul and step two is b'shtika, so therefore he holds that's your classical case where you have half C's, but you're still chayiv kares. Nobody else would hold of that. Only Rav Meir, and only through the lens of kol osel das rishona hu osel. Says the Gemara, I'm really sorry, I just don't agree with you, Reish Lakish. Says the Gemara, Amar Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchak leolam rabbanani. Really, you tried to say our Mishnah is only explainable according to Reish Lakish. Absolutely not. I'm going to say right now, what he's learning here is not the pashtus of the Mishnah, and the Gemara is going to call him out on that. Look at this. How could we learn our Mishnah like the Rabbanon? Because when our Mishnah says, and if you look at the two dots above, we'll just use that two dots as ours. It says, "Lefichachim nasan kulan kitiknan." What does kitiknan mean? We read kitiknan as doing it the right way. Look at what the Gemara says. Umay kitiknan lepigul. It means you're reading kitiknan and shelo kitiknan in the opposite ways that we read them. Rav Meir, Reish Lakish for Rav Meir, read our Mishnah. Kitiknan, you did it the right way, followed by shelo kitiknan, you did it the wrong way. Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak says, "L'olam rabbanan, my kitiknan lepigul." You started out with a machshavas pigul, And then it was Shelo Ketiknan. Says the Gemara, you can't say that. You can't flip things around like that. But Midikatani, what did our Mishnah say? The Fichachim Nasan Kulan Ketiknan, Ve'achas Shelo Ketikna, Pasal Ve'ein Bokaris. Michlal de Tikna, Lehachshirahu Da'asa. It seems, the pashtus of the Mishnah seems that the language of Ketikna is good. And Shelo Ketikna is when you messed up, but don't worry, you're still not Chayav Kares. That's how it's framed. So says the Gemara, they're both bad phrases. Omar Rava, my Shelo Ketikna. Ketikna means machshavas pigel. What's Shelo Ketikna? Chutz lemakoma. Or, as Rav Ashi would have said, Rav Ashi Amar Shelo Lishma. We know certain things. A chata Shelo Lishma, a Pesach Shelo Lishma is a zero. So says the Gemara, that's a big problem. Because if what you're going to say is that the beginning was Ketiknan, machshavas pigel, and at the end it was just Shelo Lishmo, which is not kavana, that's basically shtika. So says the Gemara, Michlal, that implies if you just have a bland kavana, you're going to be chayev. Well, if you frame our Mishnah that way, that means a machshavas pigul followed by a shtika is going to be chayev. Who's that? That's Reish Lakish. So what tried to be an argument against Reish Lakish flipped around to be a raya for Reish Lakish. The Gemara says no. You cannot make the diuk that you just made, that had it been bishtika. You can't learn from the word shelo ketikna, basically, as we've shown him here, right? Because that was just part of the symmetry of our Mishnah on Lamed Vav and Beis at the open of the parak. I did the Tana Reisha Pigol, B'chayav and Alav Kares, Tana Nami Seifa, Pasal Ve'ein Bo Kares. No, it's just part of the structure of the Mishnah, and therefore you cannot make the yukim like that. Therefore, Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak does have what to stand on, and he taka reads the Mishnah backwards. He reads it that ketiknan means machshavas pigol, and shelo ketiknan means chutz l'makoma. It's totally not the way we would have read it. And I'm curious, is the reason that he went that far because he just doesn't believe that Rav Meir holds like Reish Lakish says? So that we would have to see Rishonim for. Meisvei says the Gemara, we're on the bottom of Mem Aleph and Mem Beis, and we're going to be heading to the bottom of Mem Beis and Mem Beis, so we have another block to go. Meisvei, we have a Gemara in Menachos Daf Tez Zayin. Says the Gemara, Meisvei, B'medvarim Amurim, Rashi on the bottom line, B'medvarim Amurim Dibim Matana Achas Pigel. How do we know that we can have one matana, one machshavas pigel, and one part of the matana be mafagel? That's b'damim hanisnin al mizbeach hachitzon. That's what we saw in our Mishnah. That's b'di'eved. We're not yotze. Aval damim hanisnin al mizbeach hapnimi. But when it comes to bloods that are on the inside of the heichal mizbeach hapnimi, kigon arba'im v'shalosh shal yom kippurim, the 43 hazaos of Yom Kippur. What are the 43 hazos of Yom Kippur? So, says the Gemara, we have a par and we have a sa'ir. The par and the sa'ir are two different animals. Each of them had 8 zrikos in the Kodesh HaKodashim, and each of them had 8 zrikos in the Heichal. So if each of them had 8, that's 16 plus 16 is 32. And then the bloods were combined, according to some. The bloods were combined, and then they did zrika on the 4 corners of the Mizbeach HaZahav. That's 4, that brings us to 36. And then they did 7 zrikos on the top of the Mizbeach, which is 43. So these are the 43 zrikos. We'll see soon there are other brises with different numbers. But on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol did 4. It's great Yedias Klalias. How many zrikos did the Kohen Gadol do on Yom Kippur? 43. I'm already cheating, guys. A little Freudian slip. A little Freudian, I know. Yeah. It's 43. So, says the Gemara, Aval damim has nisan al mizbeach hapnimi, for all the zrikos that are done inside, kigon arba'im v'shal shem kippurim, ve'acharas ar shel par kohen Mashiach, ve'acharas ar shel par helam davar shel tzibor. In all of those cases, Pigel, if you were mafagel, you had a kavana, bein berishona, the first set of zrikos, ubein b'shni, ubein b'shlishis, in any of the sets of zrikos, Reb Meir Omer Pigul v'chayav and alav kares. V'chachamim Omer ein bo kares ad she'afagel b'chol hamatir. No, not either or, like Reb Meir says, but rather all of them. So this is machlokes tanoim. Now, there's something to draw from here, which is a big problem for Reish Lakish. Look at this beautiful diuk from this Mishnah from the Gemara and Menachos. Ketani Miha, what did we see in this Mishnah? That Pigel, Bein Berishona, Bein Bishnia, Bein Bishlishis. That if you had a machshavas pigol, either in the first set of zrikos, or in the second set of zrikos, or in the third. Wait 1 second. The whole pshat of Reish Lakish in Rav Meir was that you only have a case of kares if the first machshava was pigul and the second one was bishtika. But here, whether or not the machshavas pigul was in the first set of zrikos or the second or the third, Rav Meir in this Mishnah said, and he says this on the fifth line, pigul v'chayav and alav kares. Hi, kasha on Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish, you said that Rav Meir would only hold this way if the first machshava was machshavas pigul, the first ma'isa. We're going to discuss this at length. It's a very fair argument. This,
But it would still Chatzimah. Same blood, it's different sets, but it's the same blood.
But the aid that they're doing for this.
it's actually not the same blood. It's actually new blood because if you are no, you're right. In this case, it's the same blood. We'll discuss new bloods in a minute. Har and so the first zrikos are separate. The bloods are not combined by the zrikos and the kodesh hakodashim, and they're not combined by the paroches. Those 8 and 8 are separate for the seir. Rishona is kodesh hakodashim for seir and par. Shnia is par and sar on the paroches.
Maybe separate those two out.
We don't do that. We view them as equivalent sets of zrikos. 2 separate animals, 2 sets of zrikos. So the kasha that he's asking is fair on the surface because Reish Lakish wanted to say the only time there's kares is when the machshavas pigul was on step 1 and not on step 2. So now we're breaking that rule. It feels like you're going back to Chatzimat. It feels like that, that is in fact actually what Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak held, even though whatever, he had a very difficult understanding of our Mishnah at the open of the Perek. That was difficult because he changed the meaning of basic words. He has every right. I'm just saying it's just for the balabatim in the room, which is all of us. It's hard to swallow. So that was the kashu palik. So Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Avin, hacha b'maya skinan. You're right. Good question. And I therefore have to change what this Mishnah in Menachos means. What did it mean that he was mefagel on any of these cases? Kigon shepigel b'shchita. The shchita for either of these animals. And the shchita is the beginning of what would then be future zrikos. That's considered to be the chad matir, who was the Gemara. That's one sugya. So there, we can still sustain the shita of Reish Lakish, because even though it's the second set of zrikos, but it's after a shchita, so it's bechad matir, no problem at all. The Gemara says, Ihachi, if we are talking about shchita, then how could the Rabbanan say that there's no pigul? You just tried to answer up and say, no, Rav Meir, don't worry, Rav Meir, the reason why Reish Lakish still works, and really the first thing is machshavas pigul. We're talking about shchita. Well, if you're talking about shchita, then how can the Rabbanan say that you're not chayav kares? It says the Gemara, Amar Rava, man chachamim. Who are these chachamim who would say that there is no pigul by shchita? Rabbi Eliezer, he did not. And we're going to extract from the world of mincha back to the world of korbanos. We've done this before, where we have the kmitza, we have the aktorah, and those steps align with shchita, kabbalah, halacha, zrikas. Says the Gemara, that's not hakomet, someone who does the kmitza, the kohen, v'halavona, he adds frankincense, v'haktores, the bringing of the actual flour on the fire, uminchas kohanim, uminchas kohen mashiach, uminchas nesachim. We're not going to go into this, but these various different types of korbanos mincha. Shehikriv me'achas mehen kezayis b'chutz chayiv, that if you were to bring any of this on a fire outside, a kezayis, which outside of the makom hamikdash, then the Gemara says you'd be chayiv. What does Rabbi Eliezer say? Poterachi yakriv es kulan. He holds that even by the kmitza, even by the haktorah, any step, he holds that it's not enough till all of them are there. And bring that back to our case. Even if you only did shchita, it's not enough. Shchita is not enough. We need all the matirim together to generate that. So therefore, maybe we really do have a good answer. We tried to say, you asked a kasha on Rabbi Lazar, you asked a kasha on Rav Meir. We see that Rav Meir says even by the second and third zrikos, so that's not Reish Lakish kasha. The Gemara says, don't worry, we're talking about shchita. If that's true, one about the Rabbanan, these Rabbanan are Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer holds that you can't be matir until everything is there. You need all parts of the korban mincha, otherwise it won't be pigul. That's what he says. So says the Gemara. Did not Rava says, wait 1 second. Umo de Rabbi Eliezer, that can't be that Rabbi Eliezer holds that way, that everything is one. I'll prove to you that Rabbi Eliezer holds that not everything is one. Bidamim, when it comes to the bloods of the Zrikos, Ditnan, Rabbi Eliezer v'Rab Shimon Omrim. Let's say that you're in the middle of the avoda, you're in the middle of one of the 43, and you spill the blood. That's not good. That's a bad day for the Kohen. Not a day to be clumsy. Don't drop the clichés with all the dam in it. It's a very big day. Okay, no, he tripped on his own shoe, and he wasn't wearing shoes, but he tripped, you can't use colloquialisms when you're learning anything. You have to. I'll.
The day before, he was taken away 7 days in advance.
He was not playing golf.
7 days.
No, some people stand in his office. He's COO. He has a putting green in his office. This guy is. Did you really? I was joking. Oh my gosh. That's hysterical, but I was Pasha joking. Okay, you're right. He wasn't golfing. That's for sure. So says the Gemara that let's say the guy spills, the Kohen spills. Okay, what do you do? Okay, Nebuch, you have to go get another seir and another par. You have to start over, whatever animal you ruined. So what do you do? Rabbi Eliezer's name is in this list. What does he say? Where do you start from? Mimakom shepasak misham hu maschil. Even if you drop it in the middle, you start from wherever you left off. The fourth is Zerika of the seir. You start with number 5. If Rabbi Eliezer holds that everything is one, you should have to start over. So Pasha, he doesn't hold that way. Elo Amar Rava Kegon. Really, what's going on over here in this mission at the top of the page? Kegon Shepigel Birishona. Your first machshava was a machshavas pigel. The shasak b'shniya, and you had no negative kavana in the second. We would have stopped here. Classic Rabbi Reish Lakish. But then v'chazar pigel b'shlishis. Complicating factor. Is this similar enough to Reish Lakish or not? Mahu detema, we're 2/3 of the way down on Mem Beis, and we Beis a little bit more, 7 lines from the bottom. Mahu detema, isal kadaitach al das rishonahu. If you want to say everything follows the first das, your machshavas pigul when you were mefagel in the beginning, mehad or piguli b'shlishis lamali. I might have thought that no, your middle case when you were shasak breaks up what you're doing because you were mefagel in the first and in the third. The horaya, the second was dafka. Kamash Malan, that's not true. That this is coming to show a raya for the svara of Rabbi Reish Lakish, that we hold of this idea of that when you are kol ha'ose al das rishon hu ose, and we would still say that you are going to be chayiv kares in such a case. Says the Gemara, I'm sorry. Maskif lo Ravashi, midi shasak ktani. Excuse me, Rava. You gave this brilliant case. You were mefagel in case 1, and you were not mefagel in case 2. You were shasak, and you were mefagel in case 3. Does anybody see the word shtika in the Mishnah at the top of the page? This isn't. You don't get to. It's not word soup. You don't get to just pick stuff. So it says the Gemara. Therefore, another answer. Elo Amar Ravashi hacha b'mayaskinan kigon shepigel berishona uveshnia uveshlishis. You were mefagel the whole way through. You sat there for like an hour in the heichal, and you're like. Pigol. Yom Kippur. Yeah, you're being mefagel on Yom Kippur. Lifnai v'lifnim mamish. You're sprinkling by the Aron in the holiest place in the world. You're having machshavas pigol. You gotta get your stuff together. That's not the right room to do this in. So says the Gemara, Ma'u detema, I might have thought, Isal kadaitach kol ose al das rishona hu ose. If in fact we say, like Reish Lakish wants to say in Rav Meir, that everything follows your first actions, then mehader pigule b'chol chad b'chad alamali. Then I don't understand. What about the fourth thing that we left out? What's the fourth thing? So we have cases like this. We have Zrika in the Aron, by the Aron and the Kodesh HaKodashim. We have Zrika on the Parochas. Then we have Zrika on the 4 Kronos. What we didn't talk about over here was the Zrika on top. You were only mefagil in the first 3 and left out the 4th. Sorry, the 4th bucket, which was 7 Zrikos on the top. Yeah. There's 4 categories. Sorry, you're correct. There's 4 categories of Zrika. There's the one in the Kodesh, HaKodashim, toward the Aron. There, on the Bein Abadim. There's the one on the Parochas. There's one on the Arba Kronos of the Mizbech Hazav. And then there's the 7 sprinkles on top of the Mizbech Hazav. So says the Gemara, Kamash Malan. This is also classic Reish Lakish within Rav Meir. You were mefagil in the 3 out of 4 categories of zrika of the Kohen on that day. Remember, we added them. 16 plus 16 plus 4 plus 7. You were only mefagil in the first 3 cases, but not in the last one. So therefore, kamash malan, that we hold kola ose al das rishonahu ose, and even though you didn't have kavana to be mefagel on the zrikos, on the 7 zrikos, on top of the mizbeach hazav, kares. And that's the case that we were talking about. Says the Gemara, I'm sorry again, this doesn't work for me. And this is such a beautiful question if you're a stickler for language. Vaha bein bein ktani. If you look back at the Mishnah, toward the top of, where are we? And look on the 4th line of the page. Pigel, bein birishona, ubein bishnia. What does that sound like? That doesn't sound like mefagel on all of them. That sounds like you're mefagel on some of them, either or, not both. Certainly not all. Says the Gemara Kashya. Very, very, very good question. We don't know how to understand that piece of Gemara. We don't know. We tried a bunch of ways. We tried pigel, shtika, pigel. We tried pigel, 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 shtika. We don't know how to learn it. Pasha, we have no idea. But it certainly doesn't give a lot of credence to the shita of Reish Lakish. Top of Mem Beis and Beis. Let's continue. Maybe we'll even finish by 9:30. Amar Mar. Rav Meir Omer Pigol v'chayav and alav kares, as we saw earlier. Michti. How is this possible? How can you be chayav kares? Kares lo mechayav ad sheyikrevu kol matirav. We know that if you have a machsheves pigol and then they spill the blood, you're not chayav kares. It's only after zrikas hadam. You need to get through the process of shchita, kabbalah, holach, and zrika in order to be chayav pigol. But something weird is happening. You're having a machsheves pigol at moment 1, let's say, of the shchita, but you're not chayev kares until the zrika happens. So says the Mishnah, says the Gemara, excuse me. Kares lo mechayev ad shikrivu kol matir. This we know because we saw this line earlier in the Masechta, much earlier, maybe 20 blot ago, 15 blot ago, to Amar Mar, ki artzas kosher. If you want to get ritui to make a korban kosher, kach artzas pasal. Same thing is true when you're trying to create psul. You want to make a korban kosher, you got to knock off a bunch of checks. You got to hit it all right. You want to make something pasal, you also have to hit a bunch of boxes. Mahartzos kosher ad sheyikrivu kol matirav. The only way we can make something kosher is if you check off all the boxes in the positive. Afartzos pasal ad sheyikrivu kol matirav. The only way to get to pigol is if you check off a couple of boxes, the last of which is zrika. But if you're in the heichal or lifnai v'lifnim and you have a kavana of pigol, you just ruin the blood. So if that's true, skip the next 4 words. Ki hadar madi beheichal. Then, if you had machshavas pigol lifnai v'lifnim by the aron, and then you walk out, so now you're doing zrika in the heichal. The blood's possible already. What are you doing? Maya be'almahu deka'adi. It's water. It's irrelevant. You're not even doing the avoda anymore. How do we ever have a scenario of pigol in the heichal? Because if you start with your machshavas pigol in the kodesh hakodashim, the rest of your zrikos are a 0. They don't matter at all. You might as well sprinkle water. Kasha on the whole ma'asana. And how do we ever have pigol on Yom Kippur? So says the Gemara, a couple of answers. Answer number 1, Amar Rabba, Mishkachas lo be'arba'a parim uvedalid seirim. We can have this in a case of arba'a parim and arba'a. Now, we don't have arba'a parim. We only have 1. So the Rishonim explained, he spilled the blood after each one. He had machshavas pigol in the first one. Then he did another shchita, and another shchita, and another shchita. But the first mindset applied to all the other shchitas. It's a bit dachuk. I don't know how it totally solves the problem. Huh? Tough day at the office. Very bad day at the office. This guy, he just is.
Once a year.
He's got to practice. He's got to do a couple of dry runs, you know.
You play golf.
He got calluses on his feet. He walked 18 holes. My dad played 54 holes at a time in college. I think you told me 36. I think you told me you played in a hurricane once.
Had a 3-word 400 yards.
Givaldic.
We didn't realize it, we had a 50-mile.
That's gotta help.
Yeah.
That's gotta help. So this is answer number one. And answer number two, Rava Amar, afilu tema bepar echad v'sar echad. Even if you want to say that it was only one par, one sa'ir, and you weren't like, like you said, David, having a bad day at the office, lepigulo miratze. You're right that the zrikos don't count. But when you get to that final zrika, you have activated pigul. Afal pi that you're right, there's a psul in the blood, no question about it. Your machshavas pigul in the heichal, in the kodesh hakodashim ruined it. But procedurally, if you get to the end, you're chayav kares. That I hear a little bit more, even though I could hear problems with it too. This it needs to be unpacked by the Rishon. Very good. Says the Gemara, Arba'im v'shalosh. We said our Yedias Klalias is that we have 43 zrikos on Yom Kippur. We have 16 by the Aron, 8 for the Sa'ir, 8 for the Par. 16 by the Paroches, 8 for the Sa'ir, 8 for the Par. 4 combined blood at this point, according to some. Combined blood, 4 on the corners, so 32 plus 4 is 36. 7 on top is 43. How can you say that? V'atanya Arba'im v'sheva. We have 47. What is that a gap of? 4. So it says the Gemara, Ha'kamanda Amar Ma'arvin L'Kronos, V'Kamanda Amar Ein Ma'arvin L'Kronos. We have a machlokes Tanoim. Do we say that we combine the blood of the Sa'ir and the Par before we do the Arba Kronos of the Mizbeach? According to the ones who say we combine, we're only doing 4 zrikos, our number stands at 43. But according to those who say you don't combine the blood, then we need 4 zrikos for the Par on the 4 corners and another 4 zrikos for the Seir on the 4 corners. That's 47. Some say it's 48. Says the Gemara, Ha'kamand Amar Shirayim Ma'akvin. Ha'kamand Amar ain't Shirayim Ma'akvin. What do we do with the blood after all the zrikos? So one sheet in the Tanaim says, and we saw this already earlier in the Masechta, that you have to do the dumping of the Shirayim on the Yesod in the Heichal, otherwise you're not Yotze, it's Ma'akev. And some hold no, so that would be the additional 1. So either 43, 47, or 48. L'maisa, it's a lot. Meisvei, we're at the 2 dots, about halfway down. Bamed Dvarim Amurim, what is this talking about? So Bamed Dvarim Amurim, that we have pigul in a case of kmitza, but not with the lavona. This will become more obvious as we read the case. And how do we know that? Because b'kmitza, b'matan kli u'behiluch. There are numerous steps to bringing a korban mincha. There's the kmitza, which is the kohen grabbing the flour. There's the matan kli, which is putting it into a kli shares. Uvehiluch, and you have to walk there. Aval balo lehaktara, when it comes to the burning of the flour, nasan es hakometz b'machshava v'salvona b'shtika. If you grabbed the flour b'machshava, you had a machshavas pigul. V'salavona b'shtika. Oshanas anesa kometz b'shtika reversed, right? Shtika first, v'salavona b'machshava. We should not be seeing the name Rav Meir here, right? Rav Meir, according to Reish Lakish, was always first with the machshavas pigul, followed by shtika. Rav Meir Omer pigul v'chavan of kares. The Chachamim Omer ein kares ad she'afagil l'chol amatir. K'tanimio, we have a big problem with the sheet of Rav Meir. Esa kometz b'shtika v'salavona b'machshava palig. We see over here that Rav Meir holds that even if the shtika was first and the pigul was next, he still says Yechayiv Kares. That's a kasha on Reish Lakish. How can you have said a blot ago that according to Rav Meir that kol osel das v'shona oseh? That's not true. You should not be Chayiv pigul in such a case. So says the Gemara, Ema. This is super dachuk, and the Gemara will not tolerate it. Ema kvar nasan salavona b'machshava. He already did one thing b'machshava, shtupped into the Mishnah. That's this pasha not there. So it says the Gemara Chada the Hainu Reisha. That case was already discussed. That was the case that was discussed already, and that's not what we're talking about. The first case was machshavas pigul followed by shtika. Then the Mishnah flipped and said shtika first followed by. So that for sure doesn't work. V'od hatanya ve'achar kach. Is the Gemara kasha. You're right, we don't understand the sheet of Reish Lakish. So we're going to stop right here at Mos Nisan. Tomorrow night, Emir Hashem, Rabbi Handler will be here. It is possible I might not be here on Wednesday night because I have a meeting I have some parlor meeting that I have to go to. I was invited to. I'm not running one, Stan. Don't get excited. So we'll stop right here, and Emir Hashem will pick up again tomorrow night with Rabbi Handler. Wishing you all a beautiful night.